Okay. Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining this monthly SAM Best Practice webinar. Every month, I'm happy to meet you to share some news, some best practices around IT asset management and around the use of Flexera One ITAM and the FlexNet Manager. My name is Nicolas Rousseau. I'm product manager for FlexNet Manager and Flexera One ITAM. And we will take this coming hour. We spend this coming hour focusing on the management of hybrid applications by Flexera One globally. So using SaaS Manager to understand the SaaS application data, including cloud subscriptions, online usage, and eventually entitlements. We will also go through a step-by-step use case on how to manage Microsoft 365 and how this is managed in the SaaS Manager and then ITAM tool. I will stop the camera and I will just share my screen. So hopefully everything gets okay. I will start sharing my full screen, and just as an introduction, I will share this presentation, of course, which is the PowerPoint I will use today. I just wanted maybe before starting with this presentation, give a little bit of context. So if you're here, it's because you're registered, but just to remind you, if you go to the community, you will see that we have this community hub where a section is focused on events and webinars. And you will get every month the announcements of the coming session, as well as the recording and the presentation of the previous session. So this is the 7th session we're having together. I've covered a number of topics. One way of checking that, is to go, for instance, on one of the announcements, this one, for instance. And if you go to the, vote area, you will see that you have a SurveyMonkey, and you will see that each of the previous recorded session is accessible. So you could access it in the community hub. But this is quite easy to understand what has been delivered so far. And you will see also the other topics that are in the queue and that you could influence by voting for them. So I will now focus on the agenda of today's call. But that's where you can find the information related to this monthly SAM Best Practices webinar. Let's share the screen. And I just wanted to, the agenda today will be quite straightforward. And there will be a first slide talking about the last session, giving the pointers and answering some of the questions. That's what we will do first. And then we will have some news on FNMS 2022 R1, which is going to be already this month. And we will have also the second part of this presentation, which is around managing cloud hybrid applications. So this will be the technical deep dive that I will go through. And we will start with giving some context on what is an hybrid application. And then I will explain step by step which are the processes for reading the SaaS applications information, how SaaS Manager will manage its information, how the data gets transferred into ITAM or FlexNet Manager if you're on-prem, and what is coming next, how license consumption is calculated and how optimization can be calculated. I will be using a mix of this PowerPoint, where I have actually a lot of screenshots, so maybe it will make the presentation easier and more straightforward, and a little bit of demos on the live demo instance of Flexera One. Let's move on and let's start with the previous session. The previous session was around managing unrecognized evidence or applications in FlexNet Manager, and the pointer is in this presentation And the link, of course, will be in the community, in the community hub. And this is, the recording that you can find as a video. And you can also get, step by step, the agenda of the video, knowing that the video is indexed. So normally, if you run the video, you will get. I will stop that. You will get normally the steps and the various parts which are highlighted for the video. So you will know which are the sections, and you could quickly jump to where you want to go, given the indexes that have been put in the video. Okay, so let's move back to the presentation. There were a number of questions around the management of unrecognized applications. So yeah, a customer is using App Portal, and he says, how can I do? Because if I'm managing in App Portal an application, even a small one, I'm requested to manage this application in the ARL, so that I can take full advantage of the App Portal to FlexNet Manager or to Flexera One ITAM integration. And so just to summarize, App Portal has a function that allows to check the license, the availability, and to reserve some licenses. So if you don't want to use this functionality because you are talking about applications which are not very that have no licensing aspect, you could actually have a catalog which is not linked to the ARL. So we could imagine that you manage a part of your applications in App Portal related to ARL, and where you will be able to understand what are the consumption for the licenses, and a part of I would say more tactical or more tool-oriented applications, where you actually don't need to manage the application in the ARL. As an advice, I would also always say that it is good to recognize an application that you manage, because you may want to check in the inventory how much has been deployed and how much is recognized by the agent or by the ARL. But you are free not to use the link to ARL eventually. Second question that we had during this session was around the unrecognized installer evidence. And the question was simple, how do I know that an installer evidence which is unrecognized is a component or a freeware or a commercial application? And honestly, there is no easy rule. It's not written on the signature that this is a freeware or this is a commercial application. So I would just, try to check if the ARL also recognizes another version eventually of the same application. And then you could take what is the classification of this application, or eventually you could Google it. So, that's a little bit tedious, but by experience, it doesn't take hours, at least on the known vendors, to manage the installer evidences and make decisions, or check if these are corresponding to applications which are of importance or not. And the next question was around the content team. What is a team doing when you send information? So part of the question is, what happens to my ticket when I send a list of signatures? If the data is sufficient, which is important, we need to understand what is raw evidence, what is the mapped application. So that's something you should provide us if you have made the analysis. And what the team will do is add this signature to the ARL. There is no, ETA or SLA, sorry, for this activity. But typically, if you provide, let's say, 50 signatures of applications, they will be in the next month's ARL. So it's being released every month, every week, the ARL. But you may wait a little bit. If you send thousands of signatures, it could take more time, of course. And an important thing is that we have a classification of the publishers. So for, let's say, tier 2 and 3 publishers, if you have some very exotic application which have less than 20 matches in your database, we may not manage these evidences. Okay, so next question was on the unrecognized application. So people can locally manage the recognition and extend the recognition. Then, I guess the question was, how do you use the data or the extension that we make? So the idea that sharing your extensions of the recognition will be useful to the community. And maybe another part of the question was, are you yourself doing what you are asking us to do, which is extending the recognition? And that's, permanent activity, I would say. Every month we're recognizing thousands of applications, additional applications. And one thing that we're doing to do more and more is a script-driven recognition. So by finding the right patterns on the application that we inventory, we can identify, let's say, a new version which is inventory on using the data that we have from our cloud customers. And the last question, before moving to the next topic, the last question was about the chargeback report. So I'm not exactly sure what the question was. If that was about managing the embedded embedded instances of Java automatically. Let's say WebLogic provided the path of the evidence of the signature. There is a new feature which has been released in 2021 R1.4, that was this month. And this feature, which is management of Java embedded instances, along with the transparency report, will be released in the coming 2022 R1 release of April. So this release is expected for 20th or 25th of April. This is very soon. This feature, which I get the link to the documentation, will be part of the online, on the on-prem version of FlexNet, which is planned for end of April, 25th of April. Or, eventually, I was wondering if the question was not around the chargeback API, which is actually a license consumption API, and I've provided the link to the documentation of Flexera, which is giving all details on this API. So be aware that we just released end of March an API which actually allows for each user to get the details of the details. So it's a little bit, it returns a lot of data, but basically you will get each device, its host, what license is consumed, what type of license consumption it is, and you will also get something which is called the recharge value, which is basically the fact that we take the consumption, which is sometime on the host for SQL Server, Windows Server, or Oracle database, which is even on the cluster, and we take the consumption down to the consuming device. So in the case of a virtual machine in a cluster, calculations could be a little bit complicated, but this is managed by the REST API, which is returning the flat list of license per license. That's an entry point. You need to put which license you want to query. It will return all the consumptions for all the devices or users, and also the recharge value when the consumption is not carried by the consuming or the installed device. So this new feature, which is actually just for cloud customers, because we don't have REST APIs for the on-prem customers. We have a SOAP API eventually, or you can use direct SQL scripts, reading some views. So this chargeback report or chargeback REST API will not be available, but I will release a report, the corresponding reports for on-prem customer. I will release that in the community. So the idea that you can take advantage of understanding user per user, license per license, what is consumed and why. So this will be a report I will publish in the community this month. It's not very long because the report exists. It's a matter of documenting it. Just be aware that for this chargeback API, there will be also a PowerShell shared in the community, which is actually calling one by one the licenses IDs, and which is collecting the data for each of the license and which is a paginity, which is one challenge with the REST API. So the PowerShell script that I will share will also contain the fact that it will go across pages, license per license. So you will see how to build a loop in PowerShell and how to collect the data in actually a flat CSV way while the REST API is returning a JSON file. So that would be another thing shared. Okay, so that was it for the answers to the questions. Let's move on to the next, the news. And I will actually be quite fast because I spent a number of these monthly SAM best practices call to going through the new features that have been released. But let's keep in mind that 2022 R1 is the next version after the last one, which was 2020 R1. So we have, I would say, 10 months of new features included in this new on-prem version, which is quite a lot. Management of Horizon, which is actually a feature which is just being finished right now and also will be in the next cloud version. Then the Windows Server Optimization report, I went through quite in details. The ability to manage the Java embedded instances I just talked about, or this transparency report. You will see that there is a lot in this new version which is related to transparency and also optimization. Optimization for SQL Server, for Windows Server, for Oracle Database, for Red Hat, and also in Q2. So it will come a little bit later for you. It will come actually for the on-prem customers end of the year. And there will be the Adobe and the Microsoft optimization, end user optimization reports. I will develop a little bit because this is related to today's topic. But yeah, be aware that a lot of content is coming, and each report is actually detailed and documented in high details. So in the documentation you will find the explanation for each of the reports, and hopefully you will take advantage of their value. Okay, so and there have been more features around license consumption for containers, Kubernetes, for instance. For IBM, we had announcement of the agents, many agents announcement that allow to better collect the container data as well as Java information. It was actually in 2021. So auto cleanup, this one is a feature which is related to the fact that you can set up now a limit in which you want to delete the computers which have not been reported by inventory, which cleans up the FlexNet inventory manager database. Very important. Some customers may have had issue in the past with sort of false positives or merging devices, and this would be no longer an issue. So I will let you, spend time on this 2022 R1 feature descriptions. Just if I click, on one of these, just be aware that we have this, we have this product by release documentation, where you will get, all the details for all the features, and each feature has a specific description, and each feature in the online documentation will be described in details. Okay, so let's move on and move to the heart of the topic of today, which is how do we manage hybrid applications in FlexNet, in Flexera tools, basically. Being, SaaS Manager, Flexera SaaS Manager, FSM, or the data that we manage in ITAM or in FlexNet Manager. So just to give the context on this topic, what is a hybrid use case? Hybrid use case means that this is a mix between the classical but vanishing, I would say, license model, which is on-premise perpetual licenses. Which has been used by many vendors for many years, but this is really going away now. And the next generation, I would say, use of application, which is pure SaaS applications. Pure SaaS applications, taking an example of, for instance, Salesforce. you can have subscriptions. You can access, cloud application, SaaS application directly from a browser. You will have nothing installed locally, and you could eventually change your subscriptions from a year to another. So hybrid use case is a mix. And the two big examples I have in mind, which are actually quite big in terms of investment for our customers, are Microsoft 365, where so in both cases you have subscriptions. This is no longer about perpetual licenses and maintenance. This is about subscriptions that you can start, stop, and renew eventually. Then the way you use the applications can vary a little bit. It could be a mix of online and on-premise. Microsoft 365 is a good example where you could have, let's say, Visio. Visio, you can install Visio, let's say, Professional 2019 on a computer and use it to draw charts and work on all these things, and you could eventually use the online version of Visio. So which means that you have a real mix of usage that you want to track to understand your current subscription, but also what is really used and what could be optimized. Or we have another case with Adobe where actually the subscriptions are subscribed online. So when you connect to your Acrobat DC current version, let's say 2021, if you connect to Acrobat DC, you will authenticate on the Adobe portal, and you will get actually the authorization, the enforcement managed by the portal of using the application, but locally on your machine. In the end, there is no online version of the Illustrator, Acrobat, and all these Dreamweaver products. You will have an on-prem usage, but which is enabled by the active subscription. And in the end, this is a use case that Flexera is particularly good in managing. Some tools are managing SaaS applications and are collecting SaaS application data. Some other tools are very focused on the on-prem world. You will see that Flexera with Flexera One and the mix of FSM and Flexera One ITAM is able to easily collect the data. So that's the first step. This is we collect the information from the SaaS portal, who has an active subscription. Another type of information we need to understand, which is a little bit more our content, is what does this subscription cover? If it's covering an online usage or an online bundle or an online plus on-prem bundle, we need to know. And that's what the SKU is doing. So here, this is more broad by the SKU library. And another thing we need to assess the usage and assess the possible optimization is either online usage or on-premise installation. So here, again, this is a typical, mixed use case where online data will be provided by the portal, by the Microsoft 365. It doesn't provide usage on all the applications, but it covers quite a number. Or you will get also the on-premise installations and usage that could be provided by FlexNet Manager Inventory Agent or SCCM, which are the most commonly used inventory tools on the desktops or servers. So in the end, you see that we need some information, and FSM will read this data in SaaS Manager. Or I wanted here to, in the context, FSM, of course, can access the Adobe portal, the Microsoft 365 portal, and more, way more. It can access Salesforce, ServiceNow, Workday, all these applications. These are the SaaS applications adapters. And something I wanted to define here that there is a little bit of overlap with the, I would say, legacy approach, which is still very active with our customers. The Beacon has a Microsoft 365 connection, inventory adapter, or you could also have access to some, PowerShell scripts, which allow to collect the Adobe active subscriptions. So I would say, both exist. The adapters that have been developed in the past, or which are actually custom, do the job, but the strategy and the investment of Flexera is in SaaS Manager, because we need to keep, and be up to date with the new APIs, with the all this, and the idea that we actually don't invest in the beacon ability to collect more data. So to customers who say, when will we have an out-of-the-box Adobe portal inventory adapter, which would collect the active subscriptions, for instance, and the list of users? My answer is you can use the one published in the community, but we don't see short-term some additional developments because SaaS Manager is the tool that feeds into any SaaS application for pure SaaS applications like ServiceNow or Salesforce, or for even hybrid use case when it comes to collecting the application from the SaaS portal. So that was a little bit the statement I wanted to make. So just to position, the big picture of Flexera One, this is a slide actually that you may not see any longer, but it represents well the blocks, that we have in Flexera One. A part is around IT visibility, normalizing the data with the Technopedia, the Technopedia engine, and being able to understand the life cycle information. So this is everything that IT visibility does, which is collecting very detailed information and giving the CMDB view of the IT estate. IT asset management is sharing actually the inventory part, for instance, with the same agent, and we'll share soon the normalization part, which means that the version recognized in IT asset management may be major, which is what we want to manage when we do licensing. The version recognized in IT visibility may be minor when we want to understand what is the end of life date or the end of support date of the application. But in the end, in the future, we will have a common way of storing data and normalizing data, even if there are two different versions of this normalized data, depending on the use we want to do of it. And then we have, and this block of IT asset management includes the hardware asset management feature that you have made known as FlexNet Manager Cloud. It includes the SAM capabilities, which are coming also historically from FNMS, FlexNet Manager Cloud, and also the SaaS capabilities, which are what I will describe with the FSM, Flexera SaaS Manager data, which is actually collected from the specific readers that SaaS Manager has for all cloud applications, many cloud applications. And then we have the other block, which is about cloud optimization, so cloud migration and modernization, and cloud cost optimization. These are two other areas. And of course, we will have some horizontal navigation moving forward. You will, for instance, be able one day, it's not in the next 3 months, but this is what we're working on, being able, for instance, to move from an Oracle server, check the Oracle database version, minor version, understand the end of support, and eventually jump to the business services view of this Oracle server. This Oracle server is a resource. We know what business services it is a resource of, and we could have the total cost of ownership of the business service. So just to show you that we have some blocks, functional blocks, but in the end, this is Flexera One, which has a common technology for normalization, common technology for automation. This is the policy engine. Common technology, and this will expand in the future for reporting and dashboarding with an existing workspace, which is already reading across activities. So in the end, we are going to focus here, but I wanted to give you the big picture first. If I now focus the discussion around, let's say, Microsoft 365 or Adobe, the flow that we will have is quite simple. SaaS Manager will read from the portals. It will catch, the list of active users. It will catch the license entitlements. It will manage and read the SaaS usage and the activity for these applications. I would say more for Microsoft 365. Adobe will be focused on the list of active users with the active subscriptions. And this data, you will see it managed in SaaS Manager, which will give the big picture, which will give an application view of the applications, and will give the details on the subscriptions, and will give some analysis on the optimizations, possible optimizations. And SaaS Manager will actually transfer data into ITAM, ITAM that will manage and that will collect this information. So user subscription will be passed to ITAM. Online usage and licenses definitions based on SKUs will be also propagated from SaaS Manager to ITAM. And in the end, ITAM will merge data, which is coming from external inventory, let's say SCCM or the FlexNet agent for the on-premise inventory, will allow to import purchase data that will give more information than just the entitlement we had there. You will know what was purchased, when, for what amount, etc. Contracts, of course, will be managed in ITAM. So in the end, merging the online information that SaaS Manager gets with the rest of the ITAM processes and the on-prem data will provide this 360-degree view that we have with Flexera. And I will step by step describe, how the data gets read, what it looks like in SaaS Manager, and what is passed to Flexera one ITAM, to the ITAM part, and how the license will do the calculations, which allow to open to the next step, which is optimization. So, first step, is reading the data from the portals, and you can define when you connect to a tenant of Microsoft. You can define, what you want to collect in SaaS Manager. Unfortunately, I have no admin access to a SaaS Manager instance, but just like, you can define a connection in a FlexNet Manager beacon to the cloud, to the Microsoft 365 portal, you can define what you want to collect, what is the activity threshold you want to collect, because there could be a lot of data actually if you don't limit to a given period. You will be able to check, if you want to manage reclamation, which is the ability to send back to a Microsoft portal the stop of a subscription. You will also say, if you want to catch license information that eventually will allow to create automatically a license with the number allowed. And as well, the application access, which is the usage in the end, and the application roster, which is, who accessed what application, who has an active subscription. And you see here, by defining these type of information that you want to collect, and by using the application secret authentication on a specific tenant ID, you will get in SaaS Manager the data I will show you, which is everything related to Office 365, the online usage for, let's say, Office Online or Visio Online. And this data will be stored and managed and reported in the SaaS part of Flexera One. Second thing that you can do is selecting which applications you want to connect to with an announcement that we are doing now, which is not filtering so you can actually collect any license, any application from any data from any license or from any application, which will expand a little bit the data that you were able to get up to now. And that's anticipating a little bit, but once you create these, once you manage these available licenses, it will automatically be propagated into the license list of Flexera One ITAM, and you will get another view, which is actually mixing the entitlements that you get from the online usage or from the online information, sorry, the entitlement, but also the consumption that will be actually a mix of what has been installed, used online and installed on-prem. I will focus a little bit. So this is how you can connect with Flexera One with SaaS Manager, which is really the way moving forward. Let's just keep in mind that from a beacon, I would say, legacy way of collecting data for on-prem customers or for customers who don't have yet SaaS Manager so you can define on a beacon. This is the beacon user interface. You can create a new inventory connector, and you can decide, this is a PowerShell connector, and then you will pick up what type of PowerShell connector you want. This is a Microsoft 365, and the next step, when you create a new connection, we'll ask you what is the token endpoint, what is the application ID. You need to create an application that will collect the data. And you have now a choice. I'm insisting on that because it has been a challenge for many customers for years. There are two ways you can use and authenticate with the Microsoft portal. A token exists, which allows you can use a token, but the issue that the expiration date of a token is about 3 weeks. It depends a little bit on your setup, but it could be in 3 weeks. So you need to refresh the token every month, for instance, or you can use client credentials, which are now the other way you can authenticate, which doesn't have this limit of an expiration behavior. So good to know. You are not forced to use a token any longer since 2021 R1. So here, I pasted what you see on the beacon. Actually, it's the application server, but the beacon will have the same folder replicated. And I wanted to show you that in the import procedure, inventory, reader, Microsoft 365, you get actually all the logic of the importer, which is quite easy to read. This is a mix of a PowerShell that will contain basically all the read logic when connecting to the Microsoft 365 portal, and the XMLs, which are actually containing the logic for importing into the imported software license or imported application user tables. You can have all this mapping and the logic of how the data gets read into the files which are generated from the Microsoft reader, from the Microsoft connector, and all the data on how it is mapped into the FlexNet Manager or Flexera One item tables. So I wanted to point out this thing which helps a little bit understanding. This is not a black box. You can understand what's happening, and that's quite useful. So I'm moving forward. So definitely, FSM, the way forward. Beacon connection, it exists and it can be used for and is still supported and but will not evolve as much as the FSM connection is evolving. If we move forward a little bit on the data collection from the beacon, you will see that 7 files are generated from the portal. And this is a screenshot that shows the file, and each file contains a part of the information that will be used to create users eventually and create users allocations. It will create the applications and the signature for the applications that will be managed as a remote access application. The usage will also be read from these files. You see, it's a little bit encrypted. You have these UUIDs, but basically this is this application used by this user at this date. This is basically what we get in terms of application usage. And very important, talking about usage, I wanted to insist on the fact that Microsoft has implemented last year a new feature which is obfuscating the usernames and the user groups, which is nice in terms of data privacy, but this is important to keep in mind that if you don't actively check this box that says, I want to display the data, you will get unencrypted data, and then usage will be just blank. When reading from the Microsoft portal, you will import into FlexNet. You will eventually see the users, the subscriptions, the licenses will be created. Everything is nice, but you won't get these online access applications with the last use date, which is so important if you want to do some optimization. Okay, so that's one thing to keep in mind. And the other files, everything was not, I could not have everything on one slide. So the other files are related to the subscriptions, basically which user accesses to what subscription. Actually, it's, the first one is just a list of subscriptions. You see this Visio client, which has this a little bit complicated UUID. And you see here, that's actually the SKU that will be passed. So it's sort of put on the fly when the data gets read from the Microsoft portal. We catch a SKU that will be so useful to create the license and to contain and to have in the license the link to the covered applications and the link to the license type, which here is quite simple. It's an end user license. Okay, so that's about the licenses, to create the licenses based on the active entitlements. And the last thing is user allocation, which is, again, like for the usage, it's a user accessing an application or having an access to a specific subscription. And from these files, data will be inserted into FlexNet, into the ITAM backend. So I will describe a little bit more, how SaaS Manager manages the data. And what I will do is to avoid, spending too much time in the application doing a demo. So I will log in and just show you, which are the menus that I will be using in these screenshots. I will connect from here. Flexera 1. And you will see that the Flexera 1 has the unique UI, which is showing across various functional domains, being management of SaaS applications. You see here that the screenshots I will show belong to this menu. You have the licenses that you may know if you are a FlexNet manager on-prem or a cloud customer. And the licenses are the software counters, which will count, how much was purchased, how much has been deployed, what is the consumption related to that. And you see here that we have these various menus. And then instead of opening each screen and doing the full demo, I will actually show the slides which relate to these screens, which is quite simple. So going back to the to the demonstration. So I showed you, we can define what type of information we collect, and then SaaS Manager will actually have this all SaaS licenses screen, which is one of the 7 screens I was showing on SaaS on the SaaS node, and this SaaS licenses screen gives you the big picture on what are the plans which have been subscribed, what is the annual spend, which is data that you enter into SaaS Manager, what is the number of users allowed from the entitlements, what is eventually the start date and end date if we talk about subscription. So this is the first view you get, which is the big picture on this Microsoft or Office 365 application. And you get a level of detail on which are the linked licenses. The second thing you have, if you go to the SaaS license and open the license detail for Office 365, basically I clicked here. If you click on the Office 365, you will get more information on the subscribe plans. So plan F3 has 150 active items, and so it would be $10 per month. This information is showing the number of entitlements, and you can take a step back actually to understand the SaaS license usage. This screen is an overview which shows across applications the number of assigned users, the number of active users, but here it will be only on the online activity, and you will see some metrics which allow to understand the total spend and potential saving by application, by used license. If I go further into the SaaS Manager UI, that was from a license from the Office 365 application, sorry, you had a tab called the users, and this is the flat list of active users for Microsoft or for Office 365, and for each user, you know which license has been assigned to the user. So this is basically the list of subscriptions. Each user has one or more subscriptions. You could imagine to have multiple ones, and you see this information here from the roster, from the user roster. If I keep going, I did not catch the suspicious activities, but here you will see who has an active subscription with, I would say, an inactive status in the HR roster. So you could imagine that that's a pity to keep paying for active users, or even there is a risk with a user who is no longer active in the entity having an active account with Microsoft 365. And finally, the activity will show the last use date of the online usage. So you can see here, for instance, that this user connected to Office 365 SharePoint on 26th of February. And this gives you, user per user who has activity. So this is, the SaaS application, SaaS Manager view. And the data is actually transferred to ITAM, into the FlexNet Manager backend. So basically, from this data, which is collected from the portal, you will get the user subscriptions. So first thing that is performed is actually licenses get created in FNMS, in the ITAM backend. Licenses are so important because they will calculate who consumes what and who has installed what and who uses what versus the entitlements. And usage is also propagated as online usage. And the user subscriptions is also propagated, this user roster. So each user will be allocated to a license if he has an active subscription. And in the end, these named user licenses will do the calculations, which are this user has a right to use, let's say, Microsoft E5, which includes Office Online, which includes Office on-prem, which includes a number of applications, SharePoint, etc. And the license, which knows how to monitor what has been installed or used by the user based on the license definition that comes from the SKU, will basically compare for the allocated users, the users with an active subscription, it will compare the consumption and the usage. So this is a little bit of a technical view of how SaaS Manager data goes into the ITAM backend. And again, just like I was showing the reader for Microsoft 365, you see here that we have a reader inventory, import procedure inventory, and actually it's, this is Flexera SaaS Manager. And again, you will see the same type of logic, which is a PowerShell that explains all the data, what is the web REST API called from SaaS Manager, how the data gets collected to create licenses, but also online usage. And the data that will be imported as a first step, the reader step, will be actually in some invisible tables that you can't access in the UI. But we have this imported software license table, which actually shows, a number of licenses. And there is something which is hidden, which is the SKU. So you see here, maybe I don't have but the SKU is associated with the imported license, part number, you see. And we have also these, imported software license allocations, which are exactly, what user has access to what application. And this is coming from SaaS Manager. And this is imported in these staging tables before being surfaced into the license that you see in the screen, which are in the software license or software license allocation, when you have allocations of users to licenses. So the data gets first read, put in these staging tables, and then surfaced in the web UI that you see. The writer is the next step, and in the license, for instance, create update, if you read the code which is in this XML file on your beacon or on your application server, if you're on prem, you will see that the licenses are transferred from the imported software license to the license, and at the time of the creation, the SKU is used to link the license to the flat list of the flat list of applications which are permitted by the license. So I took a screenshot, of the users who are allocated. You see these permanent allocations. And the work of a license is to say, yes, Jacqueline, for instance, has an active subscription. She's allocated. She's consuming because she has one active subscription. She's installed, which is good. We see on this computer there are some applications which are consuming this E5 license. But we have no usage. We need to always be very careful with usage, but we have no usage. So it may be a good reason for optimization. And you see here, for instance, this person has not even a computer. Does it mean that he has no computer inventory at all? Or he has a computer which are inventory, you can check that, but that have no Office E5 applications installed or used. There is a need for a little bit of investigation, but you see that the license here, is reconciling who has right to use what, who has actually installed something, and eventually who has used something else or a sub-part of these installed applications. And that's where, the license, which is created here, you see, contains, the purchase, which is actually read from the FSM data. It contains the consumption, which is basically the sum of users allocated, because this is a permanent allocation. But also, you will see the difference is interesting, and that's where you can have these optimization patterns. The SaaS application data, is merged with on-premise inventory. So hopefully you see that on the screen, but you see that there is a report which is called user license detail when you are on the license. On the consumption tab, you can run this report that will show actually line by line which are the applications. And you will see that by grouping by access mode, you can get the details of the details and understand that what is local and what is Office 365. So you will see that this user, for instance, which is Richardson, Acton Richardson, this user has one computer, which has actually, Skype and, Office 365 installed, which are local applications, but also he has some online usage for Skype and some Yammer usage or Exchange Online. So you see that this is the strength of merging the data into ITAM, is that you can get the full view. And here, maybe not very easy to read, but I took this Microsoft E5, 365 E5 license plan, and you see that this is a list of applications which are linked to the license in the ITAM backend. So you see that these products actually have been passed thanks to the SKU. There is a E5 SKU that tells you that E5 contains Office Online, Yammer, Skype for Business, and so on. And then once the license knows what it should monitor, it will catch quickly, who has installed what and who has used what, and if there is a real consumption or just a waste because somebody has an active subscription that is not using. And you see here, that the optimization view is basically consumed versus used. Again, you need to be very careful on usage. Check that usage is reported correctly, and then accept the conclusions. And you will get, that's a little bit what we got earlier, but user per user, you get this view on who has installed what and used what. And it leads to a report, which is going to be released in Q2. So it won't be for the next on-prem version, but it will be for the next cloud version. In the coming release, I would say more in June, late Q2, I would say, there will be a report that will be called, actually it will be named user application, license consumption and optimization. We'll find the good name for that. But the idea is that user per user, for any named user license, the report will show you, what is the active subscription. This is the license, basically. What is the cost? We have that if you manage the license cost. What are the installed applications you see here, and what are the used applications? And then, depending on the vendor and on the plans, we will have some recommendations that will be calculated, and we'll start with the Adobe and the Microsoft 365. So the recommendation is basically, yes, you have subscribed to that. You need to pay $700, dollars a year. You have installed actually one of these many applications, but given what you use, which shows, so here there was maybe a Power BI. So you are not using Power BI, you have not installed it. So you could downgrade from E5 to E3. And the classical thing, if you have a E5 subscription, for instance, if you are just using the online version of Office, why would you pay so much? You'd better use the E1 plan, which is actually $80 a year, and you would save $620. So you will see this report, which is on Adobe, has exactly the same angle, which is let's show the user, let's show the machines where the user has installations, which are consuming the subscription. Let's understand how much is the cost of the subscription. Let's understand the installed applications, the used applications, and based on a downgrade path, which needs to be calculated, and it will be a little bit hard-coded in the report. But basically, if I know that, let's say, Acrobat plus Illustrator is cheaper than Creative Cloud Complete, which is the case, the report will say you'd better use one standalone. Here it was just one product, or two standalone products, better than the full suite, which has a higher cost. And so the report will compute some prioritized recommendations, and will give the financial impact of applying the recommendation. Okay, that's it for today. Thanks for your time. I hope I was not too long, but I was happy to spend this hour with you. And if you have questions, I'm sure you have, I will read them carefully before the next call, the next monthly call, and I will reply to the questions in the next call. Thanks for your time, and talk to you soon. Goodbye.